on behalf of BSc Brokers Forum. Forum keeps on conducting various seminars on various themes which helps the member broker to do their operations and compliance in a more efficient manner. Today we have a subject on bankruptcy law, and I am very happy that Sri Chetan Kapadia has graced this occasion as a speaker. Just briefly I will introduce him. Mr. Kapadia is enrolled as an advocate since 1995. He was trained under Mr. Rustam Garnath at Garnath & Co. and then joined the Chamber of Senior Advocates, Mr. Praveen Samdani. He has a thriving practice on both original and appellate side in the Bombay High Court in civil, constitutional, companies and arbitration matters. He appears in Supreme Court, various High Courts and tribunals. He has represented the Union of India as Senior Panel Counsel and represents the state of Maharashtra as Special Counsel. Mr. Kapadia is a member of Standing Committee of Bombay Bar Association and the Committee for Organizing Educational Workshops for Young, Aspiring and Budding Lawyers. He is also a member of the Real Estate Infrastructure Committee of Indian Merchant Chambers. And last but not the least, he is also Secretary of the High Court Law Library and a public speaker on a diverse range of subjects. So with this humble introduction, I request Sri Chetan to please come on the dais and share his thoughts.
Good evening, friends. I hope you all can hear me properly. The experience of an average Indian when he is looking at recovery of money is he has a sum of money to recover from somebody. So when he is in his 20s, he files a case. By the time somewhere in his mid-30s, he gets a call from his lawyer. Sir, our case is finally going to reach, and with great expectation, and by that time the value of what his claim was having reduced to 10%, remembering that how important the money was when he lost it, a litigant goes, meets his lawyer, attends court, and finally gets a verdict. He wins the case and soon his glee turns into tragedy because his lawyer informs him that the opponent losing party has preferred an appeal. The next time his lawyer calls him, our claimant is in his late 40s or early 50s. He's lost all the people who knew anything about the case. He doesn't remember himself too much about the case. And he still pursues it. Because that money which he claimed mattered a lot to him when he filed the case. That is the experience of each one of you all sitting here. Because that is what, unfortunately, the judiciary has given to the common man. As an alternative to that, forward-looking institutions like the Bombay Stock Exchange, on aspects which required expert adjudication, set up arbitration forums where your very own members act as arbitrators and with the assistance of lawyers decide cases relatively faster. But those cases also take 3-4 years to get decided. And then there is a round of appeal and so on and so forth. Whether it be the first sequence or the second sequence, there is one little regret which each claimant has. That regret is the man or the company which is not paying me. They are having sprawling offices. They are using the best cars. They are traveling abroad. He knows in his heart of heart that this company or this individual has moved out all valuable assets from his balance sheet and parked it somewhere else. And before he could reach the money which he had to recover, the money has gone somewhere underground beyond his reach. With this being the experience, whether in a court-decided case or a case decided in an expeditious mechanism, adjudication like an arbitration under the aegis of the Bombay Stock Exchange, our lawmakers sat down to think. When they sat down to think, they realized that if somebody has to recover money from an individual or from a partnership firm, he has to go to a civil court. After he gets an order of recovery of money, he has to adopt another equally long process, if he is not able to recover money, to liquidate that partnership or declare that individual as an insolvent. Similar is the experience with companies. First you file a claim, then you take proceedings to wind up a company, and then finally the process of liquidation. This is so far as creditors is concerned, which becomes one category of interested stakeholders in recovery of money, and if recovery is not possible because that entity who is liable claims that I have no money to pay you, then the liquidation of that entity or declaration of insolvency and bankruptcy of an individual. The other set of stakeholders are the individual himself or the directors or shareholders of a company, the partners of a partnership or a partners of a limited liability partnership, and so on and so forth. Sometimes we in corporate companies find that the assets are very few and the liabilities too huge. In that case, an individual who owns a company along with others could decide to himself close down the company. An individual who has very little money and large number of liabilities may decide to take a course where he declares himself insolvent and thereafter starts afresh. Or there could be a company which has almost no assets and no liabilities, but it still has to undergo a complex, complicated procedure of closing down. While this is category number 2, there is a huge avenue between category number 1 and category number 2. That is the creditors of an entity and the people who run or own the entity. Because both of them usually look in opposite directions. While the creditors say that this entity is not paying me money and is dishonest, the people who run the entity say, "Sir, please give us a chance. We are a viable unit. It's just present bad times and we should be restructured, we should be given another chance." This is an interregnum thought process which needs to be looked at by somebody. Having discussed these 3 background aspects, where all does all this happen? You have to go in some cases to a civil court. You have to go in some cases to the debt recovery tribunal, which is a tribunal for banks to recover their money and enforce their securities. You have to, in some cases, go to a body in Delhi called the BIFR, which is the Board for Restructuring of Companies under the provisions of the Sikh Industrial Companies Act. You have to sometimes go to a company court for restructuring. You have to engage and involve the office of the official liquidator, who is an officer of the Government of India under the Companies Act. Basically, there are several courts, several tribunals, and several bodies who all do little work on one common subject. Obviously, they don't work in tandem and in coordination with one another, as a result of which 3 consequences occur. 1, the creditor never gets his money. 2, the promoter who is dishonest is able to take out value out of the balance sheet of the individual or the company. And 3, value in an entity is lost because of the long delay in the process of 1, reaching a conclusion whether a company, an LLP or a partnership should be dissolved or wound up, and thereafter in the liquidation process. We hear quite often of companies having a shortfall in capital, but having goodwill in the market, having some brands which sell products which are quite well received in the market. Those companies, when they face a financial crunch, don't have working capital to any longer manufacture those goods which are well received by the market. As a result of which, over a period of time, those markets and the goodwill which those companies enjoy get lost in the process. We had a classic example where, fortunately for all of us, in the case of Satyam Computers, when the promoters declared that they weren't running the company as it ought to have been run by the promoters, we saw agencies from different quarters, the central government, the company law board, the Department of Company Affairs, and so on and so forth. All of them got together. They appointed an interim board to run the company. They appointed proper valuers to value the company. And they caused a transition of the entire company into the hands of another able company which was in a position to maintain the ongoing business of the company as a going concern. As a result of that, thousands of employees of Satyam Computers did not lose their jobs. Thousands of employees of Satyam Computers did not lose their salaries, or if they lost salaries, they lost it to some extent. The hundreds of customers of Satyam Computers were suddenly one fine evening not left without a service provider who left their projects midway and just disappeared in thin air. The government, along with the various agencies in charge, was able to engineer and orchestrate a smooth transition of the company, as a result of which the value of the company was not lost, and the various stakeholders in that company did not face a situation where their entire stake in the company became from whatever it was to zero. We all wish somebody had done something similar for Kingfisher Airlines, and then probably our newspapers wouldn't be reporting what they report every day about it. Because all said and done, how much ever bad the balance sheet may read, all of us can't deny that Kingfisher Airlines had assets, and more than that, it had a name and goodwill behind it for the service it provided while it lasted in the business. Coming back to our principal topic, therefore we find that there are various courts, several tribunals, numerous bodies who in bits and pieces carry out the work of ascertaining whether an individual, a partnership, a limited liability partnership, a company, or a guarantor are liable. After the entire round of liability comes a round of recovery. After the failure of the recovery process comes the stage of insolvency followed by liquidation. If one is to put timelines to each one of these processes, the total timeline from the beginning to the end, in today's present scenario, because of the number of participants, is more than the average lifetime of an Indian. Looking at such a lopsided solution to a claimant, our government set up a committee under the chairmanship of Mr. Vishwanathan. He gave a comprehensive report to the government of India, and on the strength of that comprehensive report, our legislators have prepared what is known as the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. This exchange today is not supposed to be an exchange between a lawyer and another set of lawyers, or a lawyer and a judge, for the reason that except judges, not too many people understand what lawyers say, and we've got no lawyers here. This is an exchange for us to understand this topic of how an insolvency and bankruptcy of a set of entities, starting from the lowest level, that is an individual, going higher, a sole proprietorship, going to the next level, a partnership, a limited liability partnership, or a company. How does one deal with the entire process? And how has this code proposed that the entire process will be dealt with? It's a complicated statute. It's a code. We all remember there was going to be a tax code promised to us many years back. It never saw the light of day. It's got 255 sections, 11 schedules. To put it in short, it's a lawyer's paradise, is how a common man thinks. So we are not going to have a lawyer's perspective at it. We are going to have a common man's perspective at it. Let's start with the simplest thing. When does insolvency occur? Insolvency is a situation where an individual or a company can't pay what it has to pay. Is your and my understanding of insolvency. Now, if it was such a simple subject, but everybody who wanted to adopt and invoke insolvency against a person or a company who was not paying him, had to go to one agency, second agency, third agency, fourth agency, fifth agency, and spend 50 years behind it, was not something which was conducive or an environment which supported recovery. It is in that background that a unified framework for resolving insolvency and bankruptcy in India was the need of the hour. Why I say this is because all of you all have traded or remember how stockbrokers used to trade in this very room. Our equity markets have undergone reforms. Every evening, each one of you all used to pack physical shares along with transfer deeds, pack them in cloth packets and go to the safe which the stock exchange had provided to keep it, because the office couldn't possibly accommodate all the scripts which were lying with you, and in any case they were too valuable. Equity markets have moved from physical trading to computerized trading, physical delivery to computerized delivery. We have currency markets which have made as much progress, and we have commodity markets which has made as much progress, minus an NSE debacle which everybody is still trying to deal with, though none of us know why it actually happened. It's a secret which is between a few people. So with equity markets undergoing a complete change, currency markets going through an overhaul, commodity markets being brought in line with international standards, recovery, insolvency and liquidation are an essential part of the credit market. And without a robust mechanism to deal with recovery, insolvency and liquidation, no credit market can continue to service its customers or itself work in an efficient manner. A case in hand or an example is every alternative day we hear the RBI governor, the finance minister, the finance secretary, chairmen of banks proclaiming willful defaulters, large debtors, hundreds of crores, thousands of crores, NPAs and so on and so forth. I think our banks are losing more money than they are lending. In short, the whole cycle of lending is connected with the cycle of recovery in case of defaults. And in the absence of an efficient and robust mechanism to A, make a claim, B, after making a claim, come to a conclusion that the claim is valid, C, if the claim is valid, who else are the creditors of this entity? D, if this company or individual cannot pay, do they have a right to continue carrying on business and jeopardizing the interests of other people who may be gullible and who may deal with this entity? The next one, if they don't have a restructuring plan to pay the people whom they have to pay, then should this individual or company or LLP not be closed down, its assets sold, its liabilities calculated and a distribution done? All of you all in chorus will say, but we have all this. Yes, we have it, but we have it divided between 5 different kinds of courts and tribunals. We have it with officers like the official liquidator who are connected with, which is an office of the government of India and which has its own issues of infrastructure, efficiency, modernization, doing a large part of the job. We don't have professional agencies. We don't have computerized systems. We don't have national databases. And last but the most important aspect, nothing is time bound. Nothing is time bound. The big difference in the insolvency and bankruptcy code is every activity in the entire code is time bound. There are very, very short durations granted to intermediaries who participate in the process of examination of claims, who participate in the process of preparation of resolution procedures, who participate in the process of arriving at conclusions whether the company deserves to be given chance number 2 or whether the company needs to be liquidated, whether individual needs to be given a chance or whether the individual should go the insolvency way, and an equally time-bound process to sell all the assets of the person declared insolvent. With this background, maybe look at a few typical aspects pertaining to the insolvency and bankruptcy code. The first query which arises is, who all are covered under the insolvency and bankruptcy code? We start with an individual. The next level entity is a partnership. At the next stage is a limited liability partnership. And at the next stage is a private limited company or a public limited company. That is a limited liability company. These are the 4 essential entities who carry on business in our day-to-day life. Broken down into a process. The processes are different in names, but similar in characteristics. For companies and LLPs on the one side, and individuals and partnerships on the other side. Why I put these two in two separate categories is, for the process relating to companies and limited liability partnerships, the forum is the National Company Law Tribunal and the National Company Law Appellate Tribunal. Whereas for an individual and a partnership, the forum is the Debt Recovery Tribunal and the Debt Recovery Appellate Tribunal. Other than these two differences, there aren't really far too many differences in the way in which the insolvency or bankruptcy is approached. Now the question which arises for all of us is, what are the big ticket reforms in this insolvency and bankruptcy code? Well, what has been mooted and proposed under the code is that there will be a board known as the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board. It's quite like we have the Institute of Chartered Accountants or the Institute of Cost and Works Accountants or the Medical Council or the Bar Council, which looks after doctors and lawyers respectively. This Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board is the regulator of the whole industry. As a regulator, it has got diverse functions and a wide array of responsibilities and jobs. Its principal job is to ensure that the intermediaries who carry out the work efficiently in and under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code are proper. Well, the entities who are contemplated under this code are principally an insolvency professional. An insolvency professional is quite like a licensed gentleman who has taken training of the entire process of insolvency, right from examining a claim, making a report in respect of how good the claim is, gathering all details and information relating to the entity in respect of which insolvency is proposed, making a restructuring plan along with the individual, the LLP, the partnership or the company to revive that entity before it sinks into bankruptcy. Gather all the claims from all the creditors, form a body of creditors or a committee of creditors, have the adjudication process taken up before the adjudicating authority, which, as I mentioned earlier, could be the National Company Law Tribunal or the Debt Recovery Tribunal. And if all of this fails, then change his role, get converted from an insolvency restructuring professional to a bankruptcy trustee. When I say bankruptcy trustee, I mean that an individual or a company who is not able to restructure, whose creditors decide that your restructuring proposal is not good, we prefer that you close down, we prefer that all your assets be sold, and we prefer that all the money which is realized from sale of the assets be distributed among the creditors. The bankruptcy trustee is the entity in whom the assets of the company vest and who is entrusted with the task of carrying out the job of gathering claims, the job of collecting information, the job of taking custody of the assets of the company, and most importantly, after looking into the affairs of the individual, the partnership or the company, coming at a conclusion as to are there any preferential payments? Are there any fraudulent transactions? Are there any undervalued transactions? Are there any extortionate entries in the books of accounts of these companies which need to be set aside? Are there any transfers to family members or people in close proximity and connection which are not true and which are an effort on the part of the people who run the entity to deprive that entity of that asset? This insolvency professional, who at one stage is the supervisor of the restructuring process of the entire exercise of insolvency, on arriving at a conclusion that such restructuring is not possible, becomes the bankruptcy trustee. And once all this information and data is collected, he steps into the shoes of his third role and becomes the liquidator. This is the insolvency professional who is certified and registered with an insolvency professional agency. Therefore, we have a structure quite like you all have it at the stock exchange. We have a regulator, SEBI. We have an institutional head, the Bombay Stock Exchange. We have the head intermediary, a broker. We have a sub-intermediary under him, a sub-broker. And we have various categories of other intermediaries who support the capital market. Quite like that. Here we have an insolvency board. Under the insolvency board, we have insolvency professional agencies who are like an institute of chartered accountants or the Bar Association. Under that association are trained professionals who are known as insolvency professionals, who are registered and certified by them, who are trained in carrying out the functions and duties of the entire process of resolution, accumulation of data, holding meetings, reporting, arriving at a conclusion, and if the conclusion is negative, then being entrusted with property and eventually liquidating it and distributing it. In addition to this, we have the National Company Law Tribunal, the Appellate Tribunal, the Debt Recovery Tribunal, and the Debt Recovery Appellate Tribunal. Now, in some form or the other, obviously the structure can't change. How is everybody so gung-ho about this code? The reasons are twofold. All the processes which I mentioned to you so far, all the steps which I indicated to you, right from the time of making a claim till the stage of liquidation and distribution, were steps which a creditor had to take in different forums, before different courts or different tribunals. And while all that was going on, it was always open for the debtor to make the creditor a fait accompli situation, that I am registered before BIFR. You can't do anything against me. One correction is the correction that a single entity is vested with powers from the beginning to the end. The other extremely salient feature of the insolvency and bankruptcy code is the timing. If simply following the timelines provided for under the code, steps are adopted from the day day one makes an application that Mr. X has not paid me 50 lakh rupees, till the date that he is declared an insolvent or the company is declared an insolvent, is a period of 180 days to a maximum of 270 days. And when I say this, I mean in the interregnum all efforts towards restructuring of that entity, a vote by all creditors as to whether they are accepting the restructuring or not, and a decision that if restructuring is not acceptable or restructuring is not offered, a closure of that entity or a declaration of insolvency of the individual. This takes us to stage 2. What after that? Similar timelines have been prescribed of about 180 days to complete the entire exercise of liquidation and distribution. Well, all of this sounds very encouraging, and we feel that assume all of this is done, but our experience is that people don't make true disclosures, people don't do correct filings. Participants in this entire process may collude with each other. Promoters of companies may not give information. For the first time, you will notice that if there is a default in respect of any of these activities, in the case of corporate insolvency and bankruptcy, it is prescribed that imprisonment between 3 years to 5 years and penalties between 1 lakh to 1 crore have been prescribed. In the case of individuals, it is relatively lesser. For obvious reasons, companies have large setups and their fiduciary responsibilities far more to its creditors, to its shareholders, and so on and so forth. So individuals, the penalties run into far lesser numbers, and so far as imprisonment etc. is concerned, it is between 6 months to 1 year. One more question which arises is, there are several statutes where agencies are told you have to do it within this much time, and they just don't bother. Will this code also not face the same situation? Well, it doesn't appear to be so for a slightly different reason. The reason being, there is a specific section which requires that every judicial authority or every intermediary who does not do the task entrusted to it within the particular stipulated time requires A, to record it in writings, and B, there is an additional short stipulated time prescribed within which it has to be done. So there is not a choice situation under the present code. In fact, it is a matter of surprise that the final challenge to the Supreme Court also can be made within a maximum period, and the delay which the Supreme Court can condone in respect of that appeal is also specified and restricted. This is a new kind of provision. I have not come across a provision under any statute prior in point of time to reading this statute where the power of the Supreme Court to condone delay is limited. So therefore the government, on recommendations of the committee, seems to have become quite serious of bringing the insolvency and bankruptcy process in our country in line with international standards. The average in Singapore is 8 months. The average in the United Kingdom is 1 year. The average in the United States of America is 1.5 years. And they proclaim here that the average time is 4.5 years. But all of us know it's quite untrue. In 4.5 years, if you could make a claim, get an order, go for insolvency and have somebody declared insolvent and get his assets liquidated, I think we should make that case participate in the Olympics of cases, because it would really appear that it went too fast. This is the broad structure of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. There are other provisions like there is an Insolvency and Bankruptcy Fund, but it is not quite clear why that fund has been set up. There is a contemplation that people who have contributed to the fund, when insolvency proceedings are commenced against them, they could draw money from that fund. But it's a little difficult to comprehend at the present stage as to what eventual utility will that fund have. Maybe like a Swachh Bharat cess, if the Prime Minister comes with some insolvency cess on all of us, with the anticipation that if we become insolvent, then we could look at that money and pay to somebody who we don't pay. We don't really know that. This is the broad framework and structure of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. It's a huge and big plan. There are no NCLTs in place. The DRTs are not able to do the work they are presently entrusted to do. So unless and until the central government, who is at the threshold of making this code an act in the near future, rolls up its sleeves, makes appointments, makes infrastructure available, one really wonders how it will happen. Another aspect is, without insolvency professionals being accredited by insolvency professional agencies who have trained such insolvency professionals, and who are supposed to be intermediaries to carry out the functions, duties and exercise powers under this code, till they are not on the horizon, how is this code ever to be implemented? But these are all concerns which probably the government who has come up with this code, they got it cleared by the Lok Sabha, they have got it cleared from the Rajya Sabha. It is at the President's level and expected to become an act very soon. I am sure that they are working overtime and hoping that this will become reality. We must all hope the same too, because if this actually becomes reality, then the recovery process in our country will truly shorten. The lost value of assets which are stuck in insolvency and with companies who are neither living nor actually dead, that lost value will be revived and it will get stored back or invested back in the economy. All of us, if we are able to recover money, we will put that money to use. And I think that is what our government is trying hard to do. I think this is all what I have to say. I can refer to section after section, but I don't think all of you all want to practice any law. So referring to sections is not really the correct way to have discussed or shared what the essential ingredients or features of the code are with all of you. This is all that I have to say on the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Thank you very much. I must just thank the BSE Brokers Forum, our chairman Mr. Siddharth Shah, the governing board, and our CEO Aditya Srinivas, and the coordinator Ms. Neha Ahuja for inviting me to speak to you. Thank you very much.
Friends, any questions out there?
In this case, you suggested that creditors can approach the tribunal or respective authorities. What about shareholder or owner himself? Whether they can also participate in this?
You are absolutely right. The way there are three stakeholders in a company, for example. A creditor is aggrieved because he is not being paid. A shareholder is a recognized applicant. A shareholder can recognize the reasons of default in a company and is an eligible applicant to make an application to the National Company Law Board contending that default is committed, the directors are not running the company as they ought to, and this company should be put into the mode of insolvency. Equally, the board of directors can adopt, in a given case, a voluntary winding up rule, and in another case, a forced winding up rule, if they find that the company is having liabilities which far overreach its assets and therefore either require a restructuring or require to go into liquidation. So, the people who can approach the tribunal or the company law or tribunal or the debt recovery tribunal are all stakeholders, and there are provisions which cover each one of them.
Existing pending cases, can we file a new application in new court?
For existing applications, the status is as follows. So far as insolvency applications are pending, they are governed by the earlier statute, which is the Presidency Towns Insolvency Act. Those proceedings have been saved, and therefore, if one chooses to withdraw it, then he can surely file an application. Otherwise, that application has to be completed under the provisions of the old Act. But my experience has been that whenever such a new provision comes, the old authority or entity makes it its business to complete all old applications very fast. So, while an old application has been waiting for its turn for very many years, once a new statute comes about, the old authority wants to finish off all the old proceedings under the old Act. So, either one withdraws the old proceeding and files it under the new code, or continues it and endeavors it to finish it under the old regime.
So what happens to this FASI Act then? Does it override this?
No, there are about 11 statutes in which there have been minor modifications made, and 2 statutes which have been completely repealed. The 2 statutes which have been completely repealed are the Provisional Insolvency Act and the Presidency Towns Insolvency Act, which deal with only insolvency all over India. The acts in which there have been changes made are the Partnership Act, because partnership claims and partnership insolvency is now covered under this. Then the Limited Liability Partnership Act, then the Companies Act, then the Debt Recovery Tribunal Act, the Securitization Act, which is the SARFAESI Act which you mentioned, and certain provisions of the Trusts Act, the Central Excise Act, the Customs Act are all changed to the extent required to ensure that this statute is able to carry out all what is contemplated under it without any hindrance from those acts.
Yes, timeline of 270 days, what do you say? Maximum timeline of 270 days. Is it applicable only to Debt Recovery Tribunal or National Company Law Board Tribunal, or it is everything put together?
See, there are various timelines. There are some timelines of 10 days, some timelines of 14 days, some timelines of 4 days. There is a total period of 180 days, there is a total period of 90 days. So when I mentioned 270 days together, it was just a rough and ready accumulation of all the various timelines provided for under the code which gave me a total number of days, which came to 270 days or thereabouts. In terms of accurate timings, there is one period of 180 days within which the insolvency process, that is, should we close down the company or should there be a restructuring of the company? For that period, a maximum period of 180 days has been prescribed, which would include preparation of a resolution package, getting all the information from the promoters, getting a list of all the creditors, forming a creditor committee, putting the resolution to vote and arriving at a decision whether the resolution package should be accepted or whether the company should go in bankruptcy. That is the maximum period of 180 days, for example. So there are similar timelines which are fairly strict and stringent, which are provided for under the code.
So this particular 180 days means within which the debt recovery, if I talk about individual, debt recovery tribunal will decide the case whether to dissolve the company or whether to file it.
Whether to declare the individual as an insolvent and put his assets in insolvency, or whether the restructuring plan given by the insolvent should result in a distribution of not the entire money but a lesser sum of money, as the case may be, and that vote is done by the creditors. So probably you all have it in a lot of unorganized markets. We hear it in the diamond market, or we used to hear it, that there is an individual trader who has liabilities of 10 crores and who has got goods in hand worth 3 crores. So some kind of a governing board says everybody who has a claim of 1 rupee will get 30 paisa. If the creditors say, okay, we'll forego the 70 paisa, give us the 30 paisa tomorrow, that's a restructure.
Now, in this case, the hierarchy goes like debt recovery tribunal. After that, the person will go to the appellate, aggrieved party will go to the appellate tribunal. And if that is further, beyond that, it can go only up to Supreme Court, or High Court is also involved.
No, High Court is not involved.
There it is Supreme.
Yeah, it's Supreme.
A broker having an arbitration and the High Court order in his favor against his client can file a bankruptcy or insolvency against his client.
Yes, because
What is the time? Any time limit for that?
no, there isn't a time limit, sir. Presently, so far as this code is concerned, it's not yet come into force. But assume that it comes into force and you have an award. That award is capable of execution. Now, in the course of execution, if you don't find an asset, then you have to proceed in insolvency against the company or the individual. So, you have to base your claim to be made against the company or the individual on the strength of the award which you have in your favor. And once there is an award filed, there is no defense to the individual or the company. Either they have to pay up the money, or the Debt Recovery Tribunal or the National Company Law Tribunal has to accept that claim as a valid claim. Once that is accepted as a valid claim, the interim resolution procedure as provided for under the code begins, as a result of which all creditors of that individual or company are invited by a public announcement, and all of them will join the decree holder to decide whether they want to accept a restructuring program or whether they want to put the company or the individual in insolvency or liquidation.
But the award is suppose 8 years old and you have not executed, started any execution. Will it be valid to do it now?
You must know that there is a period of limitation.
Yeah, but that is period to start the original proceedings.
Yes.
Award is already there, arbitration is already there, party went to the High Court, that award is also not in his favor. So after that one, how much time you have?
You have an award in your favor, which has attained finality. You have commenced proceedings in execution within how much time?
It was done in time actually.
Which was done in time.
Now the High Court award, it is 2008 I think.
Then why do you need to wait for this code? There is the Insolvency Act if it is an individual, and there is the Companies Act which provides for winding up if it is a company.
It's an individual.
It's an individual. So there is a notice to be issued to the individual under the Insolvency Act. You must ask your lawyer whether there is case law on this subject, because in the old regime, you could only commence an insolvency against an individual on the strength of a decree of a civil court. But under this code, whether it's a decree of a civil court or an arbitration award, you can commence insolvency proceedings. And as a result of that, you will be able to do it.
Any monetary limit to file the claim?
Yeah, you can't, it should be less than, it should be more than 1 lakh rupees. And there is in fact a small provision for a really small man. So, if your total assets are not more than 20,000 rupees, if your total liability is less than 35,000 rupees, and if your gross total income is less than 60,000 rupees a year, then there is a concept called one more chance also, which is for, but you should not be owning a house, is one of the requirements of that, where there is a small procedure or process under which, by submitting necessary papers regarding this, you can adopt this process and become free within a period of 90 days from your liabilities by giving a restructuring program. In fact, that chapter is quite like, you will remember in the good old days there was a huge mutual fund called Barings, and a trader called Nick Leeson in Hong Kong entered into some transactions, as a result of which he lost a few $1 billion or maybe $1 trillion. And a 250-year-old institution closed down. The Singapore court or the Hong Kong court, I don't remember, it's about 20 years back. In the next 6 months, they finished his trial. He was sentenced to 7 years jail. By the time I passed out of college or started working, he was out of jail and working in another institution as a very good trader. So, in short, we need a mechanism which gives people another chance also. We have had the stock market related securities code in our code from 1992. We are in 2016. A large number of your members who were parties to those transactions came to court for years together. Some of them passed away also while those cases went on. And yet there is no end to those cases. So, you all are all in business, sometimes knowingly or unknowingly. People go on the wrong side of you. But that doesn't mean that the law haunts them till they go to the grave. We all have to finish it in one lifetime. So the legal process also must be such that for whatever wrong that you do, the punishment must happen and you start again afresh. Which is probably what will happen under this. Thank you very much.
Friends, as a token of appreciation to BSc Brokers Forum, I request Sri Harinatha, our governing board member, to present the memorandum.
इसके बाद पैर भी बंद ही हो